What if one day your entire house became a prison, and the rain outside was the reason you couldn't escape? In The Last House, a family is trapped inside their home as a mysterious force seals them in, and strange creatures begin appearing outside. As the years pass, survival becomes their only goal. But the truth behind the rain may be far more terrifying than they ever imagined. Here's the full story of The Last House 2026, explained from beginning to end. The film opens in Seattle, where Jason, an out-of-work engineer, is fishing at a public pier when he notices dark clouds rolling in despite a forecast that promised sunshine. A radio bulletin warns of a heavy storm bearing down on Washington, and Jason quietly hopes it clears before Christmas. On his way home, he passes his neighbor Susan, saying goodbye to her husband Max, as she heads out for a jog, a small, ordinary moment that will later carry enormous weight. Back at the house, Jason collects the mail and finds a notice that the family is behind on their mortgage. He sets the worry aside to greet the family's aging dog Cassidy and wake his wife Anne with a box of donuts. Their children, Ruth and Gray, come tearing into the kitchen for a treat. Anne warns Jason not to slip Cassidy any bacon, since the dog has just been given his heart medication. Mid-morning, the internet cuts out, prompting groans from the kids. The family's financial stress surfaces in a quiet exchange between Jason and Anne. He jokes darkly about lottery tickets fixing their money troubles. She reassures him that their situation isn't his fault alone, and says she's ready to move whenever he is. Anne mentions she's hired a contractor to look at cracks that have appeared in the chimney, and reads his report aloud. The house's foundation is sinking, and the chimney is essentially the last structural element holding the building together. It's an unsettling detail that plants the seed for everything that follows. Despite the rain, the kids talk Jason into a Christmas tree run. He hands Gray the car keys and tells him to wait outside with Ruth. But Ruth can't get the front door open. She accuses her brother of pranking her. Gray insists he didn't touch anything. When Jason tries the door himself, it won't move. Neither will the back door, the garage, or the attic window. Cassidy starts barking. Their phones have no signal. What began as a bizarre inconvenience curdles into panic as Jason hurls himself at the door and tries smashing a window with a fire poker, without success. Through the window, the family spots their neighbors across the street, Max, and in another house, Susan finishing her jog just as Max signals to her that he's trapped inside. She promises to go find help, unaware that help no longer means anything in this new reality. It quickly becomes clear that the entire neighborhood, perhaps the entire world, has been sealed in. To calm the kids, Jason distracts them with the joking nicknames he's given various neighbors, including a boat owner he calls Doofus. Max holds up a whiteboard reading government, suggesting some kind of official cause, and later scrawls a chilling question. What if this isn't localized? What if it's happening everywhere? That night, Jason reassures his family that they have everything they truly need, each other. Ruth, tucked into bed, insists that today's rain looked different. Jason later shows Anne a gun he bought weeks earlier after a nightmare left him with a gut feeling that they weren't safe. Startled that he never mentioned it, she asks him to teach her to shoot anyway. Jason's attempts to break out escalate, drilling into doors, tearing into the walls and floor, but nothing works. He theorizes that the rain itself is somehow generating a barrier around the house. Anne worries about suffocating, but Jason confirms that air is still circulating through the vents. He patches a damaged wall with a painting to hide the evidence from the kids, and notices, unsettlingly, that bits of the chimney have begun to crumble. With no way out and the internet still dead, the family digs up an old box of vinyl records and a DVD player to pass the time. Jason calculates that careful rationing can stretch their food for about 2 months. Power, water, and gas are still running but won't last, so he tells everyone to start treating electricity and water as luxuries rather than givens. Day 4 brings the first real signs of the family adapting to their new circumstances. With the kids bored of schoolwork, Jason teaches them how to gut a fish, using Ruth's stuffed animals as stand-ins, since there's no actual fish to practice on. Ruth, curious, asks how her father knows so much about fishing. He reveals he used to own a boat before the kids were born, but sold it because, as he puts it, kids are expensive. Communication with the neighbors becomes a lifeline. Jason proposes a relay system through the whiteboard network to figure out how far the trapped zone extends. Max, revealed to be a retired dentist, checks in on their food situation. Weeks pass. Anne begins hoarding tomato seeds instead of throwing them out, determined to start a garden. Ruth discovers that the rainwater outside seems to trace whatever pattern she draws on the window with her finger, a small, eerie detail that Jason brushes off, telling her firmly not to draw on the glass. Despite the strangeness, the family settles into rhythms: music, dancing, movie nights. A month in, on Christmas Eve, they manage something like real happiness. But that same evening, in the attic, Ruth spots someone outside in the rain and casually refers to the figure as the Rainwalker, someone she claims appears whenever it rains. Jason dismisses it as her imagination, though Gray, checking the window, sees nothing there at all. At dinner, tensions flare when Ruth complains about the lack of vegetables and insists again that she saw someone outside trying to communicate with her, someone who couldn't be a regular person since everyone else is sealed in their own homes. Jason snaps at her not to make up stories, then immediately regrets his tone and apologizes. Anne tries to smooth things over with homemade Christmas cookies, sugarless and terrible tasting, which the family eats anyway out of love. Later, Jason and Anne share a joint, watch a film, and go stargazing, marveling at how clear the sky looks without pollution. Anne jokes that at least they're spared a mortgage payment this month. It's a rare, tender moment, interrupted when a motion sensor light reveals a fox watching them from the yard before it bolts. Christmas morning turns bittersweet. Ruth and Gray's gifts are meager: a half-eaten apple, a small toy. But the real gift is Anne's, the family's very first tomato grown from her hoarded seeds. The sweetness curdles almost immediately when Ruth notices Mrs. Richardson collapsing outside. Jason rushes the kids into the den to shield them from whatever's happening. When Ruth asks if the neighbor is okay, Jason's silence tells her everything, and she breaks down crying. That night, Jason gives Cassidy his final dose of medication mixed into food. As the rain intensifies, Ruth sings softly to herself before a thunderclap startles her to the window, where she sees Susan, drenched and screaming to be let in, insisting that everyone outside is dead and that no help is coming. Before the family can react, Susan is violently dragged away by something unseen. Jason yanks the curtain shut. Looking through Ruth's drawings, Jason finally has to admit that whatever she's been seeing is real, and that it clearly isn't friendly. From this point on, the family commits to staying hidden. Curtains drawn, especially during rainfall, no drawing attention to the house. The next morning, Jason watches through the window as Max wraps his late wife's body in a blanket. Life goes on in its grim, adapted way. The kids do PE, laps around the house for Gray, aerial silks practice for Ruth, while the chimney cap falls off, offering a possible way out. Jason judges the opening too narrow and himself too heavy, so Ruth volunteers, since she's the lightest. Hoisted up on the aerial silks using taped-together poles, she can barely fit her hand through before they have to lower her back down. Cassidy's health finally gives out, and Jason puts the old dog down to spare him further suffering. In the garage afterward, Anne suggests cremating Cassidy once the kids are asleep, but Jason raises the grim possibility that, as food runs low, Cassidy's remains could sustain them. Anne, unable to bear the thought, tells him to handle it without her. Standing at the fireplace, Jason changes his mind at the sight of the fox and decides to leave the remains outside for it instead. Just then, it starts to rain, and Jason notices something uncanny. The water outside has taken the shape of his handprint from where he touched the ground. The days that follow bring the family's first direct encounter with one of the creatures, a shape glimpsed outside the window that lets out a low growl before disappearing. 3 months in, hunger has become a constant. Ruth, starving, tries to raid the refrigerator, and Anne has to physically block her. As Jason moves Anne aside to show her exactly how little food remains, she stumbles, weakened. Everyone is beginning to feel the toll of prolonged confinement. Jason insists they'll make it out. Anne, at her breaking point, tells him to stop pretending they're going to starve, and she refuses to watch their children die. Gray steps up, revealing he's already cleaned some fish for cooking. Spotting the fox again gives Jason an idea. He builds a makeshift trap using meat as bait, lowering it out through the chimney opening. His first attempt fails when the fox escapes with the bait. A redesigned trap catches the fox itself, but the line snags on a chimney crack and tears, letting the animal go. Undeterred and now visibly malnourished from skipping his own meals to feed the kids, Jason engineers a new trap using rope instead of silk and lures a squirrel with a carrot. This time it works, though the trap breaks loose in the chimney and the squirrel falls dead before they can properly retrieve it. It doesn't matter. The family eats ravenously, their first real meat in ages. From here, survival becomes a way of life. Anne and Jason start using soil beneath the house's foundation to expand their garden. Trap by trap, Jason becomes increasingly skilled at catching animals and birds passing near the house. Weeks stretch into months. Word filters through the neighborhood network that some trapped families are dying of starvation, while others, like theirs, are finding ways to endure. Eventually, even the electricity fails for good, plunging their nightly routines into darkness. A hard time jump. 5 years have passed, and the family has built a genuinely self-sufficient existence, growing food, trapping animals, adapting to a world that no longer runs on modern conveniences. Ruth, now older, hangs one of her drawings in the attic window. Outside, wildlife roams freely through the abandoned streets, scattering only when rain begins to fall. Anne trims Jason's hair and offers to cut Gray's too, but he doesn't respond. The family's dynamic has visibly worn down under years of confinement. When one of Jason's automatic traps catches a ferret, Ruth questions why he's still trapping animals when they have more than enough food. He doesn't answer. Anne raises a new problem. The house is sinking further as the ground beneath it erodes. 5 years of relentless rain will do that to a foundation. Jason unveils something he's secretly built over the years. A car, patched together from spare parts. Anne is impressed, but Gray dismisses it as pointless, since they'll never be able to actually drive anywhere. When Jason asks Gray to help set up a dew collector, his son questions why they'd need more water when they already have enough. Jason, snapping under years of accumulated pressure, reminds Gray that their survival isn't guaranteed. It depends on him constantly finding new ways to provide. Anne gently pulls Jason aside afterward, telling him he doesn't have to carry the family's survival alone, and that the kids, and she, missed the version of him that existed before all this. The tenderness of the moment is cut short by rolling thunder. The family scrambles to shut the curtains and rig the new water collector through the chimney. Jason, rattled, scolds everyone for growing complacent about the rules, and orders Ruth to take down her drawings from the attic window before they attract attention. She refuses. That refusal proves costly. The creature they encountered years earlier reappears, forcing the family into hiding as it prowls through the house, its dripping tentacles withering the plants they've spent years cultivating. It stabs through the floorboards near where Ruth is hiding, and droplets from its body land on her skin. Before it can do more damage, the creature suddenly flees, apparently startled by growls coming from outside. Gray nearly bolts for the open door before Jason yanks him back just as it seals shut again. Ruth, tasting the droplets left behind, realizes with shock that they're saltwater. The rain stops. The door remains locked despite everything. And when Jason tests the family's drinking water, he finds that it too has turned salty. Gray, piecing together clues from his reading, floats a wild theory. Leviathan, Kraken, mermaids, ancient myths of sea monsters that might be literally true, given that most of the ocean floor remains unexplored. What if these creatures control the rain? And what if this isn't an invasion of humanity's world at all, but creatures defending their own home? Jason shuts the theorizing down, insisting the house is still their home and that Ruth is safe here, but the mounting evidence says otherwise. Ruth discovers the garden has been poisoned by the same saltwater contamination, and the family realizes that whatever is out there wants them to starve. Their water reserves dwindle to 3 days' worth. Under the strain, Anne finally erupts at Jason, telling him to stop pretending he single-handedly kept them alive. The truth, she says, is that they've survived out of sheer luck, nothing more, and unless they find an actual way out, they will die like everyone else. The argument is interrupted by Ruth's scream. The captured ferret has bitten her. Jason kills the animal despite her protests, but the bite quickly becomes infected, and Anne says flatly that they need antibiotics they don't have. Frustrated and desperate, Jason drives the makeshift car repeatedly into the garage door until he knocks himself unconscious. Anne and Gray revive him. Examining new cracks spreading across the floor, Jason wonders if the same shifting that's been widening the chimney cracks might be opening pathways elsewhere in the house. Following the cracks into the bathroom, he tears out the toilet and breaks through the tile, uncovering a pipe connected to the neighborhood's shared sewer system, including, crucially, the Richardsons' house, where Max, a dentist, would likely have kept medical supplies. Jason tries to squeeze into the pipe himself but can't fit. Anne can. She crawls through the narrow passage until she hits a dead end, then spots loose bricks that might offer a way forward, just as the video feed monitoring her disappears. As Jason desperately tries to force himself into the pipe after her, Gray notices a light glowing from inside the Richardsons' house and calls his father over. Moments later, the feed returns. Anne has broken through. Inside, she finds bottled water and several bottles of antibiotics, and then a growl behind her sends her into hiding. As rain begins outside, Jason and Gray urge her to hurry back before it's too late. Making her way back toward the sewer, she stumbles on Max's body and screams. The sewer starts flooding rapidly as the rain intensifies. Anne shouts for Jason and Gray to pull her out as a creature spits a black substance at her and knocks the family's gun from her hands with its tentacles. They manage to drag her free, and Jason collapses the wall behind her, trapping the creature on the other side. The antibiotics reach Ruth in time, but when Jason asks for the gun, Anne admits she lost it in the chaos. Realizing the creature, or creatures, will now come looking for them, not knowing how many people are in the house, Jason tells Anne to take the kids to the attic and wait out the coming storm while he stays behind to face it. Gray refuses to hide any longer, arguing that if the creatures can get in, then the family can just as easily get out, and that if it comes to it, they'll fight. Jason relents, and the family spends their remaining time rigging traps throughout the house, while Anne prepares a Molotov cocktail. The rain returns in force. Gray notices the bathroom faucet turning on by itself. Jason hears an ominous rumble from the chimney moments before water comes surging through it, flooding the house with terrifying speed. Submerged, Anne spots the creature looming outside. Ruth's scream confirms it's made its way inside. Jason grabs a harpoon gun, but can't land a clean shot. He calls for Anne to hit it with the Molotov instead, but his harpoon shot goes wide and the creature seizes him with its tentacles, dragging him under. Anne pulls him free just in time, and the family scrambles for the stairs as the water keeps rising, forcing them toward the attic, their last dry refuge. In the scramble, Jason realizes he's dropped the harpoon in the flooded kitchen, and Gray volunteers to swim back for it. He retrieves the weapon but has to hide when he hears the creature growling nearby, and begins to run out of air before his parents' hands finally reach down to pull him to safety. Together, the family makes it to the attic. Jason arms the harpoon while Ruth prepares to cast the line as bait, and they spring their trap, only to be pulled violently back underwater, ending up near the house's front entrance, face to face with the creature. Jason threatens to kill it unless it opens the door. In a moment of unexpected restraint, rather than attacking, he drops the knife and cuts the rope binding it. The creature simply studies the family for a long moment, and then opens the door itself. The family rushes outside to find several more creatures waiting for them. Rather than attacking, the creatures that emerge from the house seem to communicate something to the others before all of them retreat. Moments later, the house, its foundation finally giving way after years of erosion, collapses completely behind them. And then, for the first time in 5 years, the rain stops. Climbing onto a vehicle to get their bearings, the family looks out over a transformed world. Much of the city now lies submerged beneath seawater, an unrecognizable landscape shaped by whatever forces have been at work all this time. They salvage their neighbor's boat and set out onto the open water in search of other survivors. Anne picks up the radio and calls out to see if anyone else is still alive. After a long silence, a distorted voice answers back with a single word, "Hello?" Leaving their fate and the fate of the wider world deliberately unresolved as the film ends. And that's how The Last House ends, with the family finally escaping their collapsing home and discovering that the world outside has been completely transformed. But when a mysterious voice answers their radio call, their journey may be only beginning. What do you think happened to the rest of humanity? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed this movie explanation, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more movie stories.